Hello and a warm welcome from my side to today's SAP community call on the SAP Workflow Management topic. I'm Svea Becker from the SAP community team and I will be your host today. And as you can see in the video, we have multiple speakers, which I will briefly introduce to you. So we have Stephan Schluchter, who is the product manager for SAP Workflow Management. We have Jannis Schofeld, who is an education consultant and trainer in the areas of SAP Workflow Management. We have Seshadri Sreenivas, who is a product manager for SAP Workflow Management as well. And we have Sebastian Bach, who is a senior product specialist and also a trainer in the areas of SAP Business and Flexible Workflow and SAP Workflow Management. And we have asked the community to share their needs with us. What do you want to hear from us? And this is the reason for this call. And I'm really happy, maybe Stephan, you can share the blog post from Menina. I'm really happy that the team from the Workflow Management is able to answer your questions here. And I will post the link to the blog post later in the chat. So if you have additional topics you want to get more insights from, please let us know. And we are really happy to schedule a meeting to get the answers to your questions. So thanks very much to the four of you for being part of the SAP community calls. And I hand over to you, Stephan, so you can go ahead with the introduction and I will put off my video. So have fun and thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks a lot, Svea, for this nice introduction. Yes, hello and a warm welcome also from my side. As you have heard from Svea, we have to some degree different backgrounds, not only different background pictures, as you might have seen, but also different backgrounds. But we are also coming together for one big topic. It's SAP Workflow Management. And it's a pleasure for us to introduce you to some of the areas where you have the need for some questions. Though before we do this, there is a short commercial break in between, because I would like to let you know that we are actually about to release a new Open SAP course, which is called Improved Business Processes with SAP Workflow Management. And it will start end of October the 25th, just run for 3 weeks. And within the 3 weeks, you will learn quite a lot. We will give you an introduction into workflow management. You will build your own workflow. You make use of the process flexibility cockpit. You will create business rules. You will create own process variants, a process visibility dashboard, which you will see also today in our session. And of course, there will be a final exam. So I can highly recommend and invite every one of you to our new Open SAP course. I think it's a great opportunity to also enjoy the autumn season. So with that, what is our topics today? So first and foremost, for the ones who are not too familiar with SAP Workflow Management, I want to give you a very short introduction into this tool. Then I will hand over to Jannis, who will talk about the usage of REST clients in the context of SAP Workflow Management. The second or third topic, to be more precise, covered by Sesh, would be around Event Mesh as integration capability in content packages between SAP S/4HANA and SAP Workflow Management. Sounds like a big and important topic. It is, but you can also see how easy you can use it. And then we will finally sum up this call with some process visibility on business workflows, because we're not also only catering for the workflows in the cloud, orchestrated workflows, but also for the workflows which you have running in SAP S/4HANA, in SAP ERP also. And then, of course, you still have some time for your questions. Having said this, let me give you a short introduction why we are dealing with workflows and why are they important and where they can make your life much more easier. Of course, most of the processes, the standard processes, are covered within business applications, for example, SAP S/4HANA, SAP ERP, and these are roughly around, let's say, 80% of these processes are covered. But of course, there's much more. So think about, you would like to extend some of the standard business processes. Adding additional approval steps could be one use case, or think about, you would like to orchestrate also across different systems. across different processes and workflows, or just think about that you would like to create something new from scratch because you have a very specific approach how you deal with certain things within your organizations. And actually these areas, the extension of workflows, orchestration of workflows, and of course the creation of net new ones, these are the areas where you would make use of SAP Workflow Management. To really get rid of the complexity, or also be able to handle the complexity of processes, and foremost, of course, to get rid of too many manual activities within a flow, and then, of course, get rid of any kind of errors or inefficiencies and reduce also the costs. When you take a look, what is SAP Workflow Management all about? It's quite a lot. On the one hand side, of course, the workflow capability, including a low-code, no-code environment, which you could also use to manage and create your own process variants. You can also manage decisions with the business rules capability, get also insights with process visibility, really from a dashboard point of view down to the recent instance, can consume then all the tasks in the inbox, and then of course, which is coming next year as a short outlook, also providing or getting some predictions and recommendations with the workflow intelligence capability, which we plan to launch very soon. SAP Workflow Management itself is tightly integrated with other automation capabilities, like, for example, SAP Intelligent Robotic Process Automation, or you can also make use of a digital assistant within SAP Conversational AI, or even use one of the AI business services out there. So besides these key capabilities, we have workflow, we have business rules, we have the process variant editor, we have process visibility, plug and play functionality. There's something more which you will get with SAP Workflow Management. This is the predefined content. So pre-built content which you can use within your environment to actually create your own process variants. For certain scenarios, we have created a lot of content packages out there with workflows, with user interfaces, with business rules, with process visibility scenarios, and they are all there for you to try them out, but also use them in your productive environment. And with this short notion of the so-called live process content packages, I now would like to hand over to Janus.
Thank you, Stefan. So also a warm welcome from my side. Let me just share my screen. So I'm going to talk about using REST clients in the context of SAP Workflow Management. So let's have a look. Why would we use REST clients in general, and then also for SAP Workflow Management? So yeah, you could say that most cloud applications rely heavily on REST APIs. And these REST APIs allow these applications and services to interact and communicate. So this small picture here, you see some clouds. They should depict applications or services. So you could imagine this could be the workflow service and the business rule service. And this could be some other application that you have running on the business technology platform. And these applications and services, they communicate via REST APIs. And now we also want to make use of these REST APIs, for example, during the development of applications or workflows, or also then in the productive phase when you have your workflows running and you want to do some administration or operation tasks. So during development, for example, you could test single components without having the dependencies between these components. So you could simulate a certain component, for example. Let's say you would like to have an application that triggers a workflow automatically, but now during the development phase, you don't have that application ready yet. But still, you would like to try this triggering of a new workflow, starting a new workflow, and you could do it via a REST API. and use a REST client to call this REST API manually as a developer. And then as an operator, for example, you want to manage your running workflows. You want to see all of your deployed workflow definitions, for example. And then maybe an example from my side. In our training environment, when we deliver trainings, we have an account on the business technology platform, and that account is used by many training participants during a training, and they deploy their workflows into that account. And then at the end of a training, we want to get rid of some of these deployed workflow artifacts to clean up the account again. And then it's quite useful to use these REST APIs to undeploy or delete workflow definitions, for example, via a script or via REST client. So you could automate certain tasks. Also some, let's say, irregular tasks that do not happen, let's say, every day, but only from time to time. Where could you find an overview of APIs that exist for SAP Workflow Management? So you would use the SAP API Business Hub. And here I have an overview of the different APIs. So there is the Workflow Service API. Then for rule authoring and rule execution, there are APIs. For the process flexibility and process visibility, you have APIs that you could use. And then also for the inbox. So that's where all your tasks go. And you could also use the API to interact with tasks. Let's have a very quick look at the API Business Hub, just to show you. So on API Business Hub, you would search, for example, for the workflow service. And see, here we go. So you see there's an API package for SAP Workflow Service. Click on it, and then you would see you have here OData APIs, but in general, they are also RESTful APIs, and then here you have REST APIs. So here's the inbox API for Cloud Foundry, for example. And in the REST API tab, we find the Workflow API for Cloud Foundry. So that's the API to interact with the workflow service. And then when you click on it and go to API reference, you would find all of the different resources in that service or in this API. And then you would find the different endpoints and which HTTP methods to use here, like GET or PATCH. And let's have a look at the workflow definitions, for example. Then there's an endpoint to retrieve all workflow definitions, or there's also an endpoint to delete a certain workflow definition. So just go into API Business Hub and have a look to find all of these different API definitions. Yeah, here just as an example again. So when you use SAP Workflow Management, there is the Monitor Workflows app. So that's more for administrative tasks. And in the Monitor Workflows app, you could find all of your deployed workflow definitions. So in the screenshots, it's 26, and they would appear in a list here. So basically, that's the same as if you would call the API endpoint for the workflow definitions with this GET request here. And then you could also retrieve all of the workflow definitions in a JSON format. So not in a UI, but then in a technical JSON format. There's also the Start New Instance button here. But you could also do it via a REST client with this post workflow instances endpoint and start a new instance. In the request body, then you also need to send some information, but we will see it in a few minutes in a short demo that I'm going to show. And then if you want to get rid of a workflow definition, you could use the delete endpoint. And we also see in this Monitor Workflows app, there is no dedicated button to delete a workflow definition. So it might be useful to use these APIs if you want to get rid of workflow definitions from your account. Then another example would be the business rules service. And in the business rules service, you have your business rules projects. And usually, if you have not released them yet, they are in a draft state. That means they are not in a productive mode yet, you could say. So there's an endpoint to get a list of all the deployed working set rule services. So working set would mean, yeah, you're still working on them. And they're in draft state. And that would be or translate into this list here in the business rules service. And then there's also an endpoint to invoke a certain working set rule service. So let's say you're still working on your business rules project, but you already want to try it out to see if it works as expected before you actually activate it or move it into the production mode. You could use this endpoint to test your business rules project that are still in work and that you're still working on. Yeah, REST clients, small selection. So actually there are many REST clients available, and yeah, they all serve the same purpose to call REST APIs basically, but there are differences. I think the most known REST client is probably Postman, and it's widely known and used. I also use it. It has a lot of features, it's constantly growing, and has a big community. But then in certain use cases, maybe you don't want to use Postman. So that's why I came up with this topic here, and why I've also mentioned the other options here. So there's curl or CURL. That's an established URL request library. It's not actually a real REST client, but it's just a tool to perform URL requests. But by that, you can also perform or call any REST API. Now, the disadvantage with curl is there's no graphical user interface, while Postman has a graphical user interface, and it requires a lot of manual work to actually create these requests that you want to send. But an advantage is it's easily scriptable, so you could write scripts and then execute them automatically and perform these requests. Now, what I want to show today is the REST client extension in Microsoft Visual Studio Code. And actually, why it's also a good alternative is because it's also available in SAP Business Application Studio as an extension by default. And that means if you work in SAP Business Application Studio, also for workflow development, you do not have to switch into other tools, and can just directly from there also execute your requests to certain APIs and maybe test a workflow or test a business rule or something like that. Also in this case, there's no real graphical user interface, but the extension provides some means to make it easier for you to perform these requests. So there is more manual work involved than if you use Postman, but it depends on the use case. And the advantage is that you could do it directly from Business Application Studio. Okay. So this is or not meant as advertisement for any REST client. It's just for informational reasons, and I want to show the REST client extension in Business Application Studio. Before that, let's just quickly talk about OAuth 2.0 client credential flow, because that is something that is required when we want to call certain services on the business technology platform, and especially now when we want to call APIs for the workflow service. So usually we are the client, so we have our REST client application, or maybe it's also some other application that wants to call an API. And before we can call that API, here on the right side, we need to obtain an access token. And this access token can be obtained from the OAuth 2.0 tenant, which is the XS UAA service on the business technology platform. So here we can request the token, and we need to provide a client ID and a client secret to authenticate ourselves with this XS UAA tenant. And then if everything is fine, it will return the access token. And then the access token, it can contain scopes that are required to call certain APIs on the service or application that you want to call. And then using this access token, we can then call the application API. And if we have the required scopes, we will get the result that we are requesting here. So that's a very quick go through here, but we don't have much time. So I will also provide a blog entry later on that you can have a look at if you want to learn more about this. So now I'm going into a short, quick demo. So we have the Fiori Launchpad. Okay, I need to log in again. So that's the Workflow Management Fiori Launchpad. And here you see the monitor workflows tile as I showed earlier in the screenshot. And here we would see now, okay, there is a long list of workflow definitions that have been deployed here. That's because that's the account that we also use in our training here. Now we want to get this information via REST API. So I go into my dev space in Business Application Studio. And here I have already prepared a document that ends with .http. So this document is formed in mostly HTTP syntax, but there are some additional things that you can define which are specific to the REST client extension in Business Application Studio that I talked about. So you see now here, we can define variables with this @ in front of the variable and assign some values to these variables. We can do other annotations here. And then also this REST client extension provides these buttons here when we have defined a certain request. So now in this document, I have defined several requests. Now it will be hard to understand everything in this call, but just quickly, we need to obtain the OAuth access token. So here we have a post request to the authentication endpoint. And then here you see OAuth token. And for this call, we need to provide the client ID and the client secret. And the client ID and client secret I'm providing via these variables on the top here. You see they are not there yet, so I need to replace them manually. So let me just quickly go into my account, and here I have a service key for the workflow service. And within the service key, you will then find a section UAA, and there's the client ID and the client secret. These are usually confidential, so I will remove this service key after the call. So then it's not possible to use them afterwards, but I want to show it here in this call. So replace these, and now the client ID and client secret, they can be used within the requests. So now I would do a send request here to obtain the OAuth access token. And you see I get a response, and that contains the access token here. Very long, and here we see all the scopes that we get. And now we want to use this access token. So the REST client extension, it provides some more means. So here we define another variable access token, and here we can obtain from the previous request the access token. Put the bearer in front because that needs to be put in the header of the next request that we send. So in the next request, we want to actually request the workflow definitions from the REST API for workflow definitions. So here I say send request now. And you can see here the authorization header, we put the access token here. And now we would see, okay, we again get a response 200, okay. And that response, it contains all of the workflow definitions in a JSON format. So demo workflow, absence approval, CapEx, and many more. So basically everything that we saw previously in the Monitor Workflows app. So I need to get finished with my part here. So only one more thing. If now we want to get rid of some workflow definition from our account, we could enter the definition ID here in this new variable. And that will be used in the next request. It's a delete request here. And we want to delete a workflow definition. So send request. And it will tell us, okay, 202 accepted. And this means, okay, now the workflow definition with the ID CapEx A08 will be deleted from the account. So I know that this was a lot of information in not that much time. So I would recommend to have a look at the blog post that I wrote about this topic. Calling business technology platform APIs using business applications to the REST client with OAuth 2.0 authorization flows. So here you would find, again, everything that I've shown and much more. Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you very much for listening. And I would hand over to Sesh then.
All right, so let me share my screen. Shreya, I'm not able to share my screen. Could you grant me the host right?
Yep. Now you are the co-host. Sorry for that. Didn't see this earlier.
All right, so I'm sharing my screen now.
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, so welcome everyone to the second topic for today. This is the second requested topic, which is how do we use event mesh and integrate it with SAP S for HANA. And I want to explain this from the concept of SAP Workflow Management content packages that we have got. But before we go, let me first make sure that we all understand what an event is, what is event-driven architecture, and why it is important. So what is a business event? So whenever there is a change that happens to a business object in let's say the S4HANA or any other backend system, we call that as an event. But not all events are the same. Only when they are significant event, then you want to raise something called as a business event. Right? So when I say significant, changing a description versus changing the amount or the number of items to be delivered, there is a significant difference between the two changes. So whenever there's a significant change, so you want to raise a business event, and a software which can raise such events, detect these events that has been raised, or it reacts to it as well, responds to it. If there is a software like that, that it actually follows the event-driven architecture. And why it is important, this is now heavily used in microservices concept. And just imagine there are two different independent microservices. They want to communicate with each other. Then they could usually use this event-driven architecture where the source could just raise the event and the other microservice could react to it. So this is a very important concept that is used in most of the microservices in the cloud services. All right, so now when we are looking at SAP Event Mesh and how it enables event-driven architecture, for SAP applications, including SAP Workflow Management. Let's look at the sales order created event that we see here on the right. Now, whenever this event is raised, so it captures certain information like what is the event type. So here it says it's a sales order created. Of course, there are other information, but the other important information is when it was raised and what was the ID of the business object. Let's say in this case, a sales order. So this information is available as part of the business event. It pushes this information to any event mesh tenant that is subscribed to it. Right? Can also connect to multiple event mesh. Can raise the event to multiple connected tenants. Again, in this case, I've used an on-premise tenant, so I'm using a cloud connector, but you could also do the same with S/4HANA Cloud as well. So when such an event is received by event mesh, you could take that information, you can trigger a workflow as well. But as of now, we don't have the capability to call a workflow or to start a workflow directly from an event mesh. So we have an intermediate step of having a cloud integration or a Node.js application to receive this event from event mesh and then trigger a workflow. But this is something that is work in progress. We are working on it, and we plan to have this feature in the coming months. So when I'm talking about the content packages, Stephan already mentioned about it. So we already have 40 plus content packages in SAP API Business Hub across different LOBs like ECC or S/4HANA sales, procurement, and even in Ariba. And we are also having working with partner who will be creating more packages. Now you can see IBM has already published a few as well. So there are more than 40 plus packages. But today I want to talk about one of the 4 packages that uses the event-driven architecture, where it responds to events that are raised in S/4HANA by starting a workflow or starting an approval process. So today in the demo, I'll be talking about the managed sales order content package, and I'll show you how we have enabled this. So let's go to a demo. All right, so I'm in the SAP S/4HANA system, and here the first thing I've already done is to set up the connectivity between the event mesh service in the BTP and SAP S/4HANA. I'm using the S/4HANA Cloud, but the concept is same in case of on-premise as well as the cloud. So I set up a communication system. So here I've already created my communication system, and have configured and what is the host name for the event mesh in the BTP, and what are the OAuth settings to communicate between S/4HANA and the event mesh, and what is the OAuth credentials, and finally also add a communication arrangement with a specific communication scenario, which is for the enterprise eventing from event mesh. So this is something which is delivered by default by SAP. So we provide this arrangement, and that is all is required to set up the connectivity between S/4HANA and the event mesh. So now the connectivity is done. So we have checked one box where now S/4HANA knows to which tenant should this event be published. As a second step, you want to configure what events do you want to publish to what tenant. So I can open the same one that I've created. This is not the one. Yeah, so here I need to choose the outbound topics, or in simpler terms, you can say the events that you want to raise and share with event mesh. So you can add outbound topics. So you can, let's say I want to search for all sales order events. So I can search for sales order events here, and I get all the events that are available for sales order, right from changed, created, deleted, item change, so on and so forth. And I can choose that, okay, I want the sales order change event, and I could add that as a topic into this. Right? Similarly, I have added the other topics. So with this topic, now we have defined 2 things in S/4HANA. which is to which system should the events to be transmitted and what events needs to be transmitted. Here you can select multiple such events as well. Here we are talking about the outbound communication, S/4HANA pushing event into event mesh and not the inbound topics. If that's also the use case, then you could create these inbound topics as well. So now we are done with the S/4HANA customizing. So let's go into the event mesh. So I've already subscribed to the these event mesh, and thereby you get this access to the event mesh cockpit, where in the case of workflow management content package for sales order. So whenever a sales order is created or changed or deleted, you want to react to those events and create appropriate workflow or cancel a workflow, an approval workflow in the SAP Workflow Management. So the way we have implemented is we have to create a separate queues, event queues for each of those events. Let's say the sales order changed event, for example, and you can just create a simple queue, provide a name to it, any name of your choice, and then go and subscribe to certain events that are coming into the tenant from the S/4HANA. Here you need to provide a topic pattern. So there is a specific pattern in which the events come in. So one half, which we already saw in the S/4HANA when we are searching for the outbound topic. So there was a specific pattern in which we searched and we figured out the sales order changed event. And together with that, you have the namespace that you can see over here on the left side. SAP S4C CXT is the namespace that I've given here. But this is something that you create while you're creating the service instance of the event mesh. Followed by a cloud event, a CE. So this is an indicator for cloud events. In case of on-premise, you will not have this. So this is how the event would be received in the specific event mesh. So once you subscribe to a topic, as soon as the event is emitted in S/4HANA, it automatically is received in event mesh, right? Now the next part in the event mesh is what should happen when the event is received. So event mesh can be configured to call a webhook. So that's what we have done here. So we have delivered cloud integration iFlows. Like I said, we can't directly call the capability to directly call or start a workflow is not there yet, which we are working. So as of now, we have created an integration flow which receives this event, get more information about the sales order, and starts a workflow based on certain conditions. Right. So what we are going to do is we are going to call this iFlow. So in this case, let's say the sales order created events, and have configured it to call a specific iFlow. And similarly for the created, changed, deleted events as well, right? So this is all the configuration that is required. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There are a couple of configurations in S/4HANA, a couple of configurations in the event mesh, and together with the integration content, it's pretty simple to set it up. Now let's try to create a sales order. And okay, so I wanted to save time to create a sales order, but looks like I need to do it again. So let me just quickly create a sales order. Right. Okay, let me use the value help here. All right, so I've created a sold to party. Let me just add a couple of items. Right. I'll just keep it to one, and let me just create a sales order. So what happens is whenever the sales order is created in S4HANA, we have configured the event mesh. So it pushes this sales order created event into all the event mesh that it is connected to or configured to. And it's taking a lot of time. But once the event is received by event mesh, it calls the corresponding iFlow, which triggers a workflow. So for the interest of time, I'll just open an already existing one. So it creates an approval workflow where you will be able to see that task in the BTP tenant. So yeah, so that's pretty much a very simple configuration that I wanted to show here. And with that, I'll hand it now to Sebastian for the next session.
We cannot hear you, Sebastian. You're still on mute. But we see your slide already.
Yeah, classical
Yeah.
error in our times.
No
Sorry for
problem.
that.
No problem. You can go ahead now.
So I will talk about process visibility for business and flexible workflows. So in SAP Workflow Management, we use process visibility to get a comprehensive process overview on our processes with SAP Workflow Management, and over the reliable out-of-the-box deep bidirectional integration to business and flexible workflows, we are able also to get comprehensive process visibility on business and flexible workflows. So we can leverage here this capability of SAP Workflow Management also in hybrid scenarios. And this is available for SAP ERP since NetWeaver 7.4 and for all available scenarios for S4HANA, for all flexible workflow scenarios, and also for the flexible workflow scenarios in SAP S4HANA Cloud Edition. What do we need to do? In the on-premise system, we have to connect over we need a sub-account for sure and activate the process visibility service in this sub-account. We have to set up a cloud connector between the sub-account and the S4HANA on-premise system. We have to maintain destinations to the SAP S4HANA system in the sub-account and add some properties. And we need the service keys and endpoints from the process visibility service. This is the same as Jannis showed for the workflow service. So we need here also some service keys and endpoints. And then we can import the certificates into the S4HANA S-Trust transaction. And then we have to do a configuration in the S4HANA system. And afterwards, we are able to add business and flexible workflows in our process visibility scenarios. And this I will demo you. And we have here a demo in which the business scenario is that a purchaser, Anna, creates a purchase requisition. This purchase requisition starts a flexible workflow in the S4HANA system. And in this flexible workflow, there is an extension step defined, which starts a validation workflow on BTP. And after this validation workflow sends back the information to S4HANA, and the purchase requisition approval can then happen in S4HANA, and then the flexible workflow end. And I would like to show you how it looks like to have process visibility on such a scenario and how to configure that. So let's jump into the system, I first will show you the business user view. So in the S/4HANA system, we have here a purchase requisition, and I can here in the Manage Purchase Requisition app search for all purchase requisition. I here entered 2, and we can create one or copy one of the existings. And then we see here the infos about the approval details as well in the purchase requisition. And here I have an example. There is already the extension step verified, status verified. So here the extension on BTP was already running, and the purchase acquisition approval step is ready. And I have also an example in which the extension step is in process, and we can look at this from a process visibility scenario. And the process visibility scenario is configured. Sorry, I have problems with the Zoom. Let me go here. Is configured, and as a process owner or business process expert, I can here then have a look at these purchase requisition approval scenario. So here process visibility offers me a dashboard as a purchase requisition process owner to see in which status are my open purchase requisitions. And here I get information about the company code, division. I get information about the total purchase requisition amount per month. I can see in which steps are my purchase requisitions, and I can also see some process performance indicators. So I can see the step cycle time of each step, or the total cycle time of my purchase requisitions. And then I can deep dive into one of these items and then take also some actions. So if I go to the items on track, I will find one I've sent here actually. And I get the information about this instance and the path which the instance took. And here in that graphical view, or also as a table view. And I can here take also actions. So in the case I wouldn't want to take a look at the purchase requisition, I can directly jump to the purchase requisition in the S/4HANA system. So here we defined a link, and I can also hopefully, I can also trigger here another workflow in an, let's think about an escalation workflow. So I have here a status on track, but we've seen we could also have at risk or critical. And here we can also start directly then a additional workflow for a escalation. So now here we implemented here a send email workflow. So now I will get an email about this purchase requisition and that I have to take action on it. So this is the business process expert view here. How do we configure this? So here we have the workflow management dashboard and the possibility to configure these visibility scenarios. And this is the scenario I have here and my colleagues have configured. And we see here, this is a flexible workflow. We can imagine because of the ID, but we can also see we can add here SAP business workflows from a procurement system. So this is the possibility where we can here enter business workflows as process participants and flexible workflows. And we already did this with our demo flow here for purchase requisitions, this one. And but they're all available in the which are created in the system. So all standard and custom workflows are available to get process visibility on. And what is happening if we add them, we get all the events from the S/4HANA system, and we get the context of the workflow. So some items of the container from the S/4HANA system. And if we have here a scenario where we have an extension step with another workflow running on BTP, we can add as well this workflow and then do a correlation. So we get a process overview over this hybrid scenario running in BTP and on-premise in the S/4HANA system. We can then define here the status and attributes and also actions. I've shown you the purchase requisition opens a link to the purchase requisition we've seen, and also here a additional escalation workflow we can trigger by actions and are able here as well to act on critical or items that are in a critical state. And also we can define the performance indicators as we have seen. And in the monitor visibility scenario, then we can take a look on the events coming in. Here a job is scheduled, so every 5 minutes it is taking in the events from the S/4HANA system, and I started here 2 instances and I consumed here 16 events. So this is the configuration side in SAP Workflow Management, configure the scenarios, and we have also to configure a destination. So this is the destination we need to the on-premise system. So we have to enter here some additional properties that process visibility is aware of, that we want to connect here business workflows and which system name it will show up, and also the system ID and the client. And on S/4HANA side, we have in the implementation guide some steps we need to configure. So we have to create an inbound destination, maintain a destination to the external server, maintain the OAuth2 client, activate the OData service necessary for process visibility, and also for security reasons, we need an authorization role and a service user. And then we can maintain the connectivity between the S/4HANA system and the SAP account. And then we get these nice dashboard over our process. So that's all I want to show.
This is perfect, because then we have a couple of more minutes to answer some questions. And I would like to address the last question here from Sreenivas Rao. He recently wrote, sorry, question on Sebastian's demo. Is it expected that business workflow sends events to BTP, or is it outpushed from OP to BTP?
So if you configure the connection between the S/4HANA system and the BTP process visibility service, then the events are automatically pushed out. So I do not really understand the background of the question. So maybe you can go a little bit deeper on why you ask.
Okay, then let me give Sreenivas the possibility to speak. Here we go. You can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
can
can
you
hear
hear
you.
me?
Hi,
Okay.
Sreenivas.
Hi, Sebastian. So what I was asking is, okay, so what I'll just confirm my understanding first. You add a business workflow, which is sitting on your on-premise system, and then you build a process visibility out of it. And you could also build a process visibility along with your business workflow plus the extension workflow together in one PV. My question was, how do you send the events of the business workflow, which is in your on-premise system, so that a process visibility is created out of it?
It's over the integration. When I configure the integration, I can consume the events in the process visibility. So I can share my screen again. So if I have configured the destination in the sub account, have the cloud connector in place and the configuration on the S/4HANA system, then I'm able to consume the events in my process visibility scenario. And then it's automatically that the OData service is sending out it and process visibility is consuming it every 5 minutes or like the job is scheduled in our case. So I only have to add then here the business workflow, and then automatically all the events are here created, and then I can consume the events over the integration.
Okay. Okay. So if you create a KPIs relevant to your business workflows, then an OData comes to your on-premise systems and takes away the relevant information of your workflow log and then builds the process visibility. Is that understanding correct?
That is correct. So all the events here, I only took in this flexible workflow, and all the events of the flexible workflow are automatically pushed in. And then if there is an instance then coming, then I can see this data coming into process visibility. So here I entered 2 purchase requisitions, and all the events are to consume in process visibility are pushed there over the integration.
Okay. So all the events are basically the event definitions are automatically pulled in when you add a business workflow.
Automatically from the S4 system pulled in. I don't have to create them. It's there if I add the process participant.
Okay, this answers. Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Sebastian.
you.
Thank you very much. And I think this is the best chance now to close the call, because we are already at the top of this call, half an hour. So thanks everyone for joining today. And I think it was really great having this detailed explanation about SAP Workflow Management. Thanks to the presenters for today. And of course, we will share the recording very soon in SAP community. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and I hope to see you and hear you in one of the next calls. Thanks and bye-bye.
Thank you, Svea.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.